Noelvi Marte has been suspended for 80 games. Let's discuss on Fantasy Baseball today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Monday, March 11th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White, and let's talk about this unfortunate situation. Well, kind of unfortunate. Noelvi Marte has been suspended 80 games after testing positive for a performance-enhancing substance, and he is not eligible to return until June 26th. The quote on the podcast, life finds a way. This does help some of the other pieces in the Reds' infield and outfield. We'll get to those in just a little bit. But Scott, how far down have you dropped Noelvi Marte? Is he even worth being drafted now in a redraft league here in 2024?
No, he is not. I've dropped him beyond my top 400. And it's just going to be too long of a wait, 80 games, half the season, basically. And worse, you can't stash him in an IL spot since it's a suspension. If you could, it'd be a different story. It'd probably be worth a late round flyer anywhere, given the upside. But since you can't, and he's taking up a bench spot, April and May are the 2 months where you should probably be the most active on the waiver wire, because that's where we learn so much about how things are going to play out this year. So you want as much free space as possible to keep a spot occupied on a guy who we won't see until July, right?
June
presuming the Reds
June 26th at the earliest.
June 26th. Yeah. Okay. Presuming the Reds even have an opening for him.
Yep.
At that point, which, life finds a way, but it won't for sure find a way. I think that's a difficult sell. NL only league, different story, obviously, really deep league like that, or a dynasty league. I don't think this really reduces Noelvi Marte's dynasty appeal. You could say, PEDs, he's going to turn into a pumpkin when I don't think he's going to turn into a pumpkin. There hasn't been a lot of compelling evidence from past PED cases to suggest that. He's been a highly regarded prospect since he was 17 years old. So I don't think this changes Noelvi Marte's long-term value, but in the short term, it craters, I would say.
Let's talk about the moving pieces, the moving parts here outside of Noelvi Marte. Does clear up the infield a little bit. Jeimer Candelario expected to be the team's primary third baseman. We know Elly De La Cruz and Matt McLain will man shortstop and second base respectively. That leaves first base and DH for Christian Encarnacion-Strand, Jonathan India, and Jake Fraley. Obviously, the outfield occupied, we're expecting at least, by Spencer Steer, TJ Friedl, and Will Benson. Scott, does this help anyone gain value with the Reds hitters?
It helps everyone. I mean, if the biggest concern for all those Reds hitters was the logjam, it doesn't look like much of a logjam anymore. I do think Elly De La Cruz at shortstop, Matt McLain at second base, they were pretty much set there. They could have lost the job. McLain, he was dealing with an oblique injury, though he did finally return to the lineup this weekend. So I feel like they've basically secured those spots. So it was really third base, first base, DH, left, center, and right that we're talking about, where a bunch of players were going to have to share at bats. That's 6 spots for now, 7 players. It used to be 8. 6 spots for 7 players. We could work with that. I mean, it could feel like they're all full-time players if David Bell manages it properly. And I think there are going to be some obvious cases where hitters sit. Jake Fraley, that's the name. Jake Fraley and Will Benson probably going to sit against left-handers more often than not. I mean, now that they're down to 7 options for 6 spots, each of them is probably going to get some turns against left-handed pitchers. But that creates an easy opportunity for Spencer Steer or Jonathan India to step into the outfield. Not to mention there's the DH spot now that's unoccupied. The player who might gain the most value of all of them is Christian Encarnacion-Strand, because David Bell is talking like there's no need to play a Jeimer Candelario at first base anymore. Now that third base is wide open, that's just Candelario's position. And so who is going to play first base then? Encarnacion-Strand is the obvious choice. It's not to say Jonathan India, the most flexible of all these players, him and Spencer Steer anyway. That's not to say neither of them would ever appear at first base, sliding Encarnacion-Strand to DH. But I think Encarnacion-Strand's going to play as often as anyone else, any of those other 7, more often than the left-handed hitting outfielders. So I would say my willingness to draft him, Encarnacion-Strand, improves the most with this news. But I'm also very excited about the prospects of Will Benson and the power speed combo there, particularly if he gets to play some against left-handed pitchers. I'm less fearful of the bust case for Spencer Steer. I'm even kind of interested in Jonathan India again. He also made his spring debut this weekend after nursing an injury. So it's really, really bad news for Noelvi Marte and anybody who invested in him already, but it's good news for all the other Reds hitters.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.